In this lesson, we're going to be going over hyperlinks, and hyperlinks are what the very core of the internet. Essentially, the internet is a series of files, and they're all linked together. And the way that we're linking them together is using hyperlinks. So hyperlinks are at the very core of forming the web itself. And every single web page is going to have hyperlinks. We see them over here in blue on the brackets page. We see them over here, up here. We've got hyperlinks all over the place. So every web page needs to have hyperlinks because this is how you get your users to flow from one page to the other and eventually end up where you're intending them to end up, and also flowing through different websites and so on. So hyperlinks are core concept of web design, and hyperlinks can be added in with the anchor text. So we see here that we've got an anchor opening and an anchor closing, and then the content in here is represented by the hyperlink. So right off the bat, we see that nothing is really happening over here, and that's because we haven't actually set anything with the hyperlink. So even though we've added in the anchor tags, it really is meaningless right now because we're not specifying what we want this anchor tag to do. So we can as well specify using href, so adding in an attribute, just like we did with the images, and this will give us the ability to link to a web page. So let's say, for instance, we want to link out to Google. So we would add in the whole URI for Google, and we can see as I'm typing this in, it gives that underline. And this is a default characteristic of a hyperlink, is where it underlines the hyperlinked content. So that content over here is what gets underlined by default. Now, when it comes to hyperlinks, there's quite a few other things that we can do within hyperlinks as well. So I'm going to just add in a few more paragraphs here, and just to fill up the web page a little bit more. And I'm going to show you what else we can do with hyperlinks. So hyperlinks are anchors, and much like they allow us to go to other web pages, we can also create hyperlinks that link to different sections of our web page. So here I'm going to create a hyperlink, and the format is the same, so it's href, and we're going to link it out to an ID within our web page. So we're going to do the hash, and we're going to just call it 1, 2. So if we had our web page sectioned off, we could do it in this type of format where we've got our, I'm going to put this in within a paragraph here, so it's get some formatting around it. So we see that we've got this href, we can go to 1, we click it, nothing happens. But if I give it, and this is something else you can do with any element, you're able to add in attributes. So I can give it an ID of 1 to coincide to that ID, and we see that whenever now I click it, it automatically scrolls it down to the 1 section. So let's add in some H1s, 1, and close off the H1. So if I had my web page actually sectioned off, and if I had a lot of content, a whole bunch of information here, or if I was making a one-page website, I can add in a hyperlink here or an anchor that will link down to a different section of my actual same web page. So it's not like this hyperlink that actually is going to take us to Google if we click it, and I don't want to click it yet because there's something else that I need to still add in there. But we see that this gives us the ability to actually anchor different sections of our website. Very useful part of hyperlinking. So as I mentioned, I've got this link going out to Google, and if I do click it, it's going to bring me over to Google. But the one problem here is that it's going to try to link out to another web page, or it's going to try to link out and bring my entire browser screen to that web page, to that window. So I just saved the pen, and we see when I click it, it brings us over to Google, and this is not what we want to happen within our web page, because we want the users to, if we're linking externally, usually best practice is to add in a target and specify the target as blank, And now, whenever somebody clicks this, so I'm going to just save it quickly, and now when somebody clicks it, we see that it opens up and it brings us to, opens up a brand new tab within our browser and brings us, so no longer are we losing that entire web page. And we see that this hyperlink still works. So you can add as many hyperlinks as you want. And this is the whole idea between linking. So we also do linking within our navigation bar. So if we had an unordered list and if we had a list type, and typically you're going to see structure like this where we've got our index page and so on, and all of the links. So this might be home and so on. So this would be a typical way of representing a navigation menu. And another list item maybe for another element within the web page, so the About Me section. So now whenever I link to these, they're going to go to these local pages. And notice how I'm not including the whole URI. And this is what's known as a relative path or a relative link, because it's relative to where you are on the web page. So if you are on that same directory, so we've got index and about within that same folder, then it's going to know the path because this is relative to where you're positioned. And absolute paths are something like Google, because it actually doesn't matter which page you're linking to this Google from, it's always going to go to this entire URI. So if you include the HTTP ://, then that's an absolute path. And if you're doing a relative path, then this is in relation to where you're currently sitting. And there are a lot of different cases for using different path formats. So typically, if you're creating a dynamic website and you're not sure about which page they're actually going to be sitting on, if it's got folders within it, and so on, even though it's within your own website, you might want to use the absolute paths so that you can be sure that you are getting to the right pages. And also, even if you're targeting things like images, make sure that you're using the proper path format. So we've got an image here, and I'm going to add in an image. So if you had the image locally here, it would be something like this. So this would be a relative path in an image, and you can also use the full path that we've got over here, so copy link address, within your structure as well. So this would be an absolute path. So different ways of adding in path systems, and we can see that hyperlinks, source code, and any other way that you're linking to files is going to use this type of linking format. So relative versus absolute.